Hinsdale Music Club. Whoops. Sorry, this is a problem in my Logic. It keeps trying to start something there. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, welcome to the Composers Forum for the Hinsdale Music Club today. We've got two composers that are going to present some information, some works that they've done and some processes that they use. So today, Elider DiPaula is going to go first, and he's going to go for about 20-25 minutes, and then you got about 10 minutes or so to ask him questions after his pieces. And then I'm going to go for about 15 minutes or so, and then we can do an overall Q&A. So I think that's about it for me. Let me see, where's my, hide this a second. There we go. So I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you.
So
Okay. Do you want me to start, Patty?
yes, you can share your screen.
Okay, awesome. So some of you already know me as a pianist, but I am also a composer. I perform, there's a lot of compositions that I perform in different parts of the world, and I have a lot of friends using my composition elsewhere, but it's not my main profession. I don't consider that as it's what I make money of. I know there are some composers that their main resource of income, but for me, it's more a way of expressing myself, is a way of transferring some of my thoughts and some of the experience that I had as a pianist, as well as my understanding of music. And I think it's extremely enjoyable to be able to do this. So the two pieces that I'd like to share today, there are two different song cycles. Each song cycle has 3 songs. And the first one is in Portuguese. Was one the time that I was still in Brazil, I was living in Brazil, and I selected 3 poems by a Brazilian poet. And the second song cycle reflects the times that I was already in the United States, was the edge towards the pandemic, and one of the songs I composed during the pandemic. And it's based on 3 poems by W.H. Auden. And those 2 cycles, even though they're in different languages, but they are somehow related. The first one, the songs of hate, sorrow, and hope, they are 3 pieces that I was commissioned by, even though I said that I don't make money with the composition, but I was commissioned with the song cycle by a concert series in Brazil in 2015. And they commissioned that in 2013, but there was a problem with the production of that concert, so they postponed that. But this was composed in 2013, and it's a triptych based on the poems by Alvina Tsovenos. The first one is Mysteries from her collection Words at Time. The second one is Melancholia from Dreams Experience. And the third one is Life Has Colors from her also Dreams and Experience. So the 3 pieces, they reflect a little bit of my life at that time when I went through a very traumatic relationship, and the breakup, and the depression, dealing with suicide, not from my end, but dealing with that situation. That what inspired me to create this song. Both cycles are extremely dark. They have this eerie type of mood in the air when listening to it. The first one is what represents the hate, and they call it Mysteries. And there are some very interesting text paintings that I try to approach. There's an ostinato with the piano that keeps repeating throughout the piece, in almost like an aggression and I use the octatonic scale. So if you know, the octatonic scale is the 8-note scale, and that each degree is based on an alternation of whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. I also use motivic development in a polyphonic manner, and that generates some ideas for the following songs. The second one I use, that's Melancholia, that represents the sorrow song. It's a little more ethereal, as the time has stopped. Instead of having the tick tock from the first one, now it's just time is fluid, and you feel that by the use of the hexatonic scale. That's the 6-note scale. And I use the one that is a whole tone scale that we all know. So it creates this eerie, this ethereal type of environment. And the text, the poem that begins with is that there's a disturbance in the air. Nightingales are lost. I want to say, like, if you like, you don't have where to go. You like don't have a ground to rely on. The third song, it's very French-like with a very virtuosic piano part. And it's called The Life Has Colors. I try to put some of the translations there. It's really hard to translate from Romance language, Portuguese to English. Sometimes it's like, and that translation is not mine, but it was an American who spoke Portuguese. So it's very tricky to get some of the nuances of the text, but at least you have some idea. And I used, since we're describing colors, I used rapid harmonic shifts to the pianos, like as if it was a painting in the background. Each instance that the singer sings the text, Life Has Colors, I use a different type of scale that modifies that same text, representing different colorful approach to the same instance. And the scale that I use for this one is the acoustic scale. Acoustic scale is a heptatonic scale, so 7-note scales. And the beginning of that scale is similar to the whole tone scale. So there are 3 whole steps, and then it ends with the octatonic scale. So that scale itself is like a reminiscence of the previous 2 songs. That it was the octatonic, the second one, the whole tone scale. The third one, that is a song of hope, it's almost if you're trying to use what you experienced prior in the previous 2 songs, and you transform that hate and that sorrow into what is hopeful. And the last text of that song is Life Has Colors, even in a dead heart. So it gives you hope of like even moments that like you succumbing, you like, there's no reason to go forward. You can attach, you can latch on to hope from whatever perspective it is. So I'll let you guys hear it and have the music on the side so you can see. I don't want to digress too much in the details. We don't have much time, but if you have any question, please let me know after the second song cycle so we can hear it. Okay, so before we do this, let me just share a visual idea of the octatonic scale. The singer, I am playing the piano, and I have a singer. Oh, if I can share this. And the singer is Aaron Lays, a baritone, a Canadian baritone, and he wrote a part of his dissertation for his doctorate. He wrote about the song cycle, and I'm just using from his first draft, just so we have an idea of the acoustics here for the third song. So you see that it starts with a subset of the whole tone scale, and it ends with a subset of the octatonic scale, just so we have like a little idea of it. All right, so I'd like to share the video now. Please let me know if you cannot hear, if there's any problem there. Are you able to see it? Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. So this one is the first cycle. Thank you. it is, as I said, is a little bit dark, but at the end, the colors, like it just like brings some hopes, but it's not solidified because you see there's still some bitterness in it. And I think that's what I used to create the second song cycle that I found that was necessary, especially during the time that we had, the pandemic, at brink of happening, dealing with all of that. So we already felt that going on. So this first song, the next cycle of songs is again based on W.H. Auden. I call it Songs from Another Time. And it's linked to the collection that he wrote, some of these poems that he called Another Time. That is a collection of his poems. And the first song is dedicated to Aaron, who just sang the first cycle. This next performance was premiered in December at Project 88 by Dana Brown, a Chicago-based pianist, and Justin Hovat Adai, another baritone in the area in Chicago as well. He has sang a lot more in musical theater lately. So you can catch some of the quality of his voice to musical theater, but he did a terrific job. This song cycle in particular is extremely hard to perform. And even like discussions in the coaching session that I had with them, Dana and I were just like, we are amazed how well all of this came to fruition so quickly. So the next song cycles, the first one is The More Loving One. The second one is Oh, What Is That Sound? And the third one is the famous Stop All the Clocks that even Britain made, like the funeral blues setting that is present in that song is best. So the More Loving One, it started with that bitter taste. The first song of the first cycle was more like the compatibility with life in nature right here amongst us, and not agreeing that some things happen around us. Now for the second song cycle in English one, it's a little more of a cosmic approach, the surrender of our own ways of processing deception and incompatibility itself. I use the Neo Baroque ornamentation for the accompaniment, and the ostinato, similar to the first song from the previous cycle. The ostinato with the left hand of the piano is still happening, slightly different. And I use a lot of quartal chords that at the end you're gonna hear as if like was boiling, the patience, representing patience. It's like you very annoyed at something, but you pretending everything is fine. The singer, you see that it discourses on a poetic dissonance with the text. So the accompaniment is a little bit more into the naive, almost like jokey-like, and the singer just like vomiting all this information to us, and just like overwhelming. The second song is a little more of a scenario of what's going on in the scenario of it's one singer, but the singer has to represent two characters. One is a naive person, and the other one is the aware person. They are a couple, and the scenario, they are in a quarry, and there are soldiers, red soldiers are coming towards them because the one character is found guilty of something, and the other person is just like, oh, look at that, look how funny. So we talk about the romantic lie. Like, oh, what are they doing? Why are they coming towards us? What are they doing there? Is that the farmer they're looking for? But that person does not realize that they're coming after their partner. And it's dealing with the romantic lie of like, when is this person going to get over it? But I love this person so much, how am I going to tell them that that's what's happening? And at the end, the only reasoning is withdrawal, is simply abandoning the other person to deal with it, because there's no other way to overgrow that. So it's a very interesting piece. I use like a lot of a hexatonic scale as well, similar to the second cycle from previously. So hexatonic is the 6-note scale. The whole tone is one of them, but in this case, I use a different one. That the way that is built is based on a 1.5 step or an augmented second, and then a half step, a minor second. Then 1.5, a half, 1.5, a half. So that's how it's displayed. And you're gonna hear a lot of like cluster likes, but it's just like playing harmonies based on that scale. And it brings a little bit of the air of like the drums, if not a drum, an actual drum, more of the heart. It's just like what's beating, just like I'm getting anxious and something is about to happen. And this person, on my side is just, not seeing what's going on. So I have to deal with this. The third song is Stop All the Clocks. That is a funeral piece. That is, if you guys know the text, you're gonna realize that like it was the love that Auden had. He was gay, and it's a description of like his love for someone he had lost. And the main scene in the beginning is Stop All the Clocks. And I try to paint that scenario by having three main motives. One is the curtain, that is a ascending arpeggio. The other one is a stagnant third that is just like keep repeating, that goes against that arpeggio and represents the clock, like this old clock, like in the houses that they have like the clocks, they will have the bells. It represents one of those. And there's the motivic idea that represents the lingering question of why. There's nothing to comfort me. There's that unanswered question, very similar to the unanswered question by Ives, that the harmonies of the orchestra just like very pasty. And then there's the trumpet enters with that very dissonant melody. And I think I try to inspire something alike to that. So those three motifs will be throughout the entire piece. We're gonna hear moments of desolation, transformation, reminiscence of like memories that we had prior. And the main text, like the moment what made me decide to use this piece was, he was my north, my south, my east and west, my working week and my Sunday rest. I thought that love would last forever. I was wrong. And he ends with the clock, the bells again, the same question, and he closes with a curtain, but in an irreparable mood. And the last text is, the stars are not wanted now, put out everyone, back up the moon and dismantle the sun, pour away the ocean and sweep up the wood, for nothing now can ever come to any good. Which like sets this extremely dark mood for the piece. But I think it's the closure that what inspired me to create the first song cycle. This piece, this second cycle was the closure to what inspired me before. So they are wrapped together, even though they're different languages, but it reflects in my life, because I was speaking Portuguese while I'm Brazilian and I speak English, even though it's messy English, but so it reflects a part of my life as well, as sets a closure to what inspired me in the previous song.
Looking up at the stars, I know quite well that for all they care, I can go to hell. But on earth indifference is the least we have to valley, drumming, drumming. Only the scarlet soldiers dear, the soldiers coming. Oh, what is that light I see flashing so near over the distance, brightly, brightly? Only the sun on their
So those were the two cycles. So total 6 songs. It's very, it's almost dreadful, to hear them. There's a lot of emotions going through it. And I think the process of composing it was not easy. I gotta say, it was not easy at all, to just vomit all those emotions out there. But I think I was, I hope I was able to at least give a little bit of, of what the insight of my composition. The first song, and one thing that I realized now, that is I end the third song of the second cycle using the same scales that I used from the first cycle, the first song of the cycle. So it has the octatonic approach in the beginning and at the end, having this ambiguous scale that is neither tonal or atonal. It's it can be approached either way. So yeah, I think that's it. If you guys have any question, I'll be, glad to discuss it. I don't know if we have time, Patty. I know we went over.
Yeah, we're running a little bit late. I know we got a late start, but yeah, really thank you, Elider, for sharing that. If anyone has a quick question you think Elider can answer relatively briefly,
Am I able to?
yeah, please feel free to ask, or otherwise I really want to make sure we have time for Sharon too. Okay, well, let's move on with, well, thank you. It's really interesting, the use of those scales, and I didn't know all those different scales before. That was really something. So, okay, so thank you. So Sharon, let's
Sure.
have you share, and I'll spotlight you.
All right. This will be a little bit of a different change here. You guys let me know if you can't hear. Can you hear everything okay?
So far, yes.
Okay, cool. I'm just going to show you, so I do mostly new age type music, but I am taking a lot of the more advanced harmony classes now. So I actually could follow a lot that Elider was talking about there with the different scales and the, octatonics. And now we're actually getting a lot into modal music. And I used a little bit of mode music in this album. But mostly I stay kind of tonal and just do a lot of, a little bit of modal interchange you'll hear in some of it, but I do mostly new age kind of minimalist type of music. And I predominantly use, let me just get that, I'm going to hide that a second there. All right, and so I use Logic to compose in, and just to give you so this is one of the tracks off of my latest album called Breeze of a Memory that's getting a lot of good feedback actually. So the way it works, I kind of lay out at the top here, there's when you're working in Logic, you can put your arrangement in. And so you usually have an intro and then some kind of a bridge and then maybe a verse and a chorus, and stretch it out like that. And then eventually go to an outro. And then you just basically put in all your instruments here. And I know this is a MIDI view that you're seeing right here. Let me just go to my editor a second. Go to the editor. Whoops. There we go. So it can go either piano roll, which once you really get into it, it looks like an old-fashioned piano roll. And that's pretty much the way I do a lot of the composing now, but that you can also look at it as actual sheet music, what they call score view too. So it's pretty neat. And then you can go across, whichever instruments you want to, and then you can pull up the whole score as well. You go up higher level and you can pull in multiple instruments to see the entire score. So this is very popular, the way a lot of modern composers do it. A lot of film composers use these kinds of tools. And then what you do eventually, once you're happy with all the individual tracks for each of the instruments, then you do what's called a bounce down, and you bounce the tracks down to one particular track. And that's what I'll show you at the bottom here. So then you generate an actual audio file from it. So this track is an actual audio of the, actually I'll pull it this way so you can see it a little bit easier. And you can just hear that this is the actual audio that it goes with the track. So I just thought I'd show you that because that kind of shows you a little bit of the process that you use. And then you could take these audio files, and then what I've done recently with this album was actually turn them into, I use this tool, it's a application called Canva, CANVA, and a lot of people are using this for all kinds of stuff on their websites or doing music and movies, making videos, that type of thing. I gotta move this thing out of the way here a second. Let me just move it there. So then I put together, what you do is you pull in the tracks and pull in the audio file, and then you can actually add movies, videos on top of that. And in Canva, so I just thought I'd show you how this works. If you're a pro subscriber to it, then you can pull in these videos for free. And if they're the pro version, then you can pull them in there royalty free then to use them, because you're paying for annual subscription. And then you pull in these, and then you can actually make an actual movie to go along with it. So then when you, excuse me, go over here, I'll just start it to kind of show you what this looks like then. Whoops, sorry. I'll get that out of the way there. So you guys can watch that. I just thought I'd share that a little bit with you, but I wanted to show you one other thing. And actually, I probably should have pulled up one of the other tracks because I don't have a lot of strings in the breeze of memory, but I just thought I'd show you, because what you do a lot is, here's a strings group. So I'll grab this. I just wanted to show you some of the stuff that you can do that in here that, let me grab like a cello here and kind of show you what we do is I use a lot of libraries. There's a lot of, they record actual string players and then they turn them into digital samples, basically is the way to think of it. And then so if I was to play this instrument, I don't know that I have it. Yeah, I have Contact loaded up here. You can hear just this instrument. So this is just that track. What you do when you're trying to simulate synthetic strings is, let me pull it up here a little bit more so you can see it. You use these dynamics and expression curves to try to mimic how an actual string player plays. And this takes a lot of time to actually do all this type of thing, but it's very common, short of, you know, producing a score and bringing it into a studio with a full orchestra. This is the way a lot of stuff is what they call mocked up orchestral renderings, that type of thing. And so it's pretty sophisticated. And I'm not sitting at my studio, but they actually use like a little MIDI controller to actually play along with it. And you put these against each of the tracks. And then so there's a dynamics type of a curve, controller curve, they call it, or an expression curve. And you try to kind of match those so that you're mimicking how an actual string player does it. So, and then it takes a fair amount at the very end once you bounce it down, then you do a lot of production type work against it. So then in this track, the final bounce down track, let me pull that up a second. I'll just show you a little bit. I just thought you'd be interested in how this is actually done. And then go to the mixing board. There's an actual mixing board built in here. So all your tracks, so all the instruments are sitting in here. These are a lot of, everything that's shaded brown here is more my synthesizers. Then I go through some of the trombones that are sitting in here. And then I use a lot of cellos and some different string groups, and then some drums, that type of thing. And then eventually it's all mixed down to this final track, I don't do a lot on this one. I mostly did a lot of what they call audio FX, special effects. And so I use a lot of EQ curves, which are equalizers. So for instance, each instrument has its own resonant frequencies, and kick drum's not a good one to show, but let me pull back up to a string here and just kind of show you how this works. So like an EQ curve for low cellos is more like this, where you kind of take out the very, very low end frequencies, and then you boost a little bit at the mid lows, and then a little bit up high around, this is around 2300 hertz. And so you basically are kind of trying to mimic, what happens with real strings, real instruments, and then you put them into a different reverb hall. So like this is actually in like this one I didn't put them to, I routed the strings group. Let me find that a second. Here we go. Into a reverb hall. So this is a modulated hall for synth strings. And so you're basically kind of, and they have all kinds of things in here. I'll just show you. It's pretty amazing. Like if you were to use large ones, they have concert halls from like Amsterdam and the Sydney halls and Vienna halls. So it gets pretty interesting. And you can basically kind of mimic, what would sound like in a real, because they actually take the acoustics from those halls. So I just thought you'd be interested in kind of seeing how this kind of works and what goes into it. But the end product is then something that is hopefully really enjoyable, for people to take a look at there. So you can take a look at, what kinds of questions do you guys have? I guess I'd open it up for that, because there's a lot here to compact down. So let me just close this again here. It keeps trying to pull up some instruments that I don't have on this Mac here. What kinds of questions do you guys have for me?
So, Sharon, do you sort of get ideas, like motivic ideas, or do you put the form together first, or kind of how do you begin before you dive into the digital process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I pretty much try to go from a motif or a melody idea that I get a little, sometimes it could be a 2-bar type of an idea that I'm going to develop. Or sometimes I hear the whole thing, like eight bars, a real strong melody comes through, and then I'll start to work, like, how do I build to that? How do, like I was showing you, work on the arrangement part of it initially, and then build from there. So, and I'm pretty big into, I love lush orchestration sounds. And so I do a lot with the actual modulation of chords across the different instruments and things like that, and laying them out. And so I'll work it that way. So it's a good question, but I'd say mostly I'm melody driven or chordally driven. Actually really, sometimes I found beautiful chord progressions. I'm like, okay, now I want to hear a cello on top of that or something, or a strings group, or a violin or something like that. Or sometimes a piano. You'll hear in some of my tracks, they're very piano driven with ostinatos or something like that. And then goes out into something else. So it's a hard thing. Other people have asked me that. I just a lot of times hear melodies in my head and then work from that and then build out. And sometimes they become very complex. The thing I've really been working on the last couple of years is simplify. Every time I work on something, I have a lot of 4 or 5 distinct melodies. And some of my teachers will tell me, Sharon, you have 4 or 5 songs in here. It's too much. Separate them out. And so it's great in my harmony class that I'm taking right now, because we're working on things as short as 2 to 4 note type. We're working a lot on modes right now, finding the characteristic notes within each mode and building a melody off of that. And it's absolutely amazing. If you were like, go look at John Williams or some of the big cinematic composers, that's what they do quite a bit. It's John Williams, melodies are very, very simple. It could be 2 to 4 notes that he's building off of, and it becomes this lush, beautiful orchestration that just goes right to your heart. So I'm trying to do that type of thing a lot more now. And but that's kind of the approach I take. And it can start all over, like I said, it can start with the chords where the progression is just beautiful. And then I'll work on a melody to go over top of that, or that type of thing. So it's a good question, though. It's a weird process to say, how do you come up with the songs that you do? I don't 100% know. I know some people say, and I would say there are melodies that are kind of floating out there, and people that are kind of receptive. If you listen, you can hear them, because I've heard songs on the radio that sound like a very similar melody to something I've got. And they probably developed around the same time. It's not like I had somebody ask me one time, how do you know that you're not just ripping off somebody else, some melody you heard from a long time ago or even your childhood? Well, there are programs that scan all over the airwaves out there now to just do nothing but make sure people aren't sampling more than 7 seconds of somebody else's music, that type of thing. So, but I personally believe that music exists out in another realm, and that if you listen, really, you can work on it and you hear it and then you develop it from there. I don't think it's typically, you can go to Beethoven or whatever, where the da 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 da, where's that come from? Where's that little motif? And then the whole symphony is built around that. So there's something that's out there, or a lot of nature sounds, that's what Beethoven built a lot of his stuff off of that too. So, but I'm strongly both chord. I was really a lot tonal music for even in this album, but I'm really getting into modes and working a lot with Lydian and Dorian. And then, if you want to go dark, go into the Locrians and some of the much more complicated, darker type sounds that are real popular in a lot of pop music. And you can do a lot with them. So it's just so rich, all the different approaches. Or what Elider was talking about with scales. We've been studying a lot of the octatonic scales and things like that, and they're quite rich in terms of what you can do to develop different compositions. And like what I have to say, Elider and yours, what really struck me was how you can grab the emotion that you put behind it, so the words in combination with that, and is what you're doing with the scales and stuff. So it was very, very powerful, I thought. So,
Thank you. I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm not a technological person.
mhm.
I'm very challenged when it comes to technology. I mean, all of my compositions, they are handwritten.
Yes.
Because I cannot function in like dealing with the computer at the same time that I'm trying to be creative. I really struggle. So your presentation of the way that you organize your music, for me, is just like, what? It's like,
Yeah.
where's going? I have no idea how to do that. And it's so interesting that like you can control like all the nuances and how technology just advanced to the level that you can control the environment where the sound is coming from, or just mock it, as well as like the expression of each instrument, each line it boggles my mind.
It's remarkable today. It really is. And you would be amazed at the amount of thing. I'd say 80% of the stuff that you hear on TV is done with these kinds of tools today, because they don't have the budget to hire an orchestra. For a lot of this stuff today. And so it's really amazing that you can sound so good where it almost sounds like but don't forget, when you buy these libraries, you are paying for a string player to sit there, and then they basically digitize it. And then you pull that in. So these libraries can be quite expensive. They can be thousands of dollars to get them. I have I just upgraded over the holidays to Spitfire's core symphonic ones, which are really good, but there's a pro version that's like $1,500 just to get that version of the strings. There's that many more articulations that they put into it.
But when you're producing this type of music, like if you're gonna hire the orchestra, it's a lot more than $1,500.
Exactly.
$15,000 to hire them to have all of this work done, and you're only getting one track perhaps. And
exactly.
You buy the library, you have like you can duplicate the tracks or like create different music using the same material.
Exactly.
So if you use that mainly, I think it's extremely worth it. I don't think it's overly expensive.
No.
It requires a lot of time. I'm sure that you spend an exorbitant amount of time learning about this.
Yes.
When you just put this bunch of buttons in front of me there, I was like, no.
Yeah, I have to say, when I first learned Logic, because all the classes I was taking, whether it be production classes or orchestration or cinematic composing, they were all using these tools. A lot of them use Cubase, or Logic is the big one today on the Mac. And so I started learning Logic. I used to use Digital Performer, which is used a lot in film music, but then everybody's using Logic. So it literally took me about 2 years to learn Logic. It's just learning how to use all the tools and be productive in it, where you weren't just like, how do I do this again? How do I put these notes in? How do I do the articulations, things like that? So
for me, it's remarkable. I can barely operate a can opener. So for me, it's remarkable that I can deal with all of that.
Exactly. Well, the good news is you can take something from paper and just hand it off to somebody, and they can put it in and mock it up. They do that quite a bit, So,
but I think the main motive from both of our presentation, both of our compositions, very different approach, and I think it's
Yeah.
what, it represents how composition is such a spectrum, and
Exactly.
anyone can approach that differently. It's a way that you transcribe what you're feeling, and if you have the skill to be able to transcribe that, and I think it's what every composer is striving for, is not the style, is nothing else, is by, what is your main, the thing that makes you more comfortable. And I think
Right.
understanding about scales, because scales has been like throughout the entire music history, is something that it's still pertinent.
Exactly.
Even though we went to spectralism in music, with Penderecki, it's just like approaching different type of sounds that is not based on a scale or on a type of organization. But what Sharon was saying, like from modal scales to atonal scales,
Mhm.
to to any collection of sounds, any type of organization of sounds, there's a lot more there than just major and minor. In fact, major and minor is based on modal scales, and after those scales, we came up with different others, scales based on 5 degrees, 7 degrees, 6 degrees, 8 degrees, scales that they are endless. And I think for any composer, all my composition students, I try to teach them these other ideas that composers can approach. So, and a lot of them are mesmerized. It's like, wait, what? I can do this? It's like, absolutely, whatever you want.
Exactly.
And there was a time, I remember when I had my first composition lesson back in Brazil, and my teacher said, we are during the time, it was like, what, 10 years ago? No, 15 years ago. And my teacher said, like, this is the time that we're still going through the transition of people not being accepting of new styles. The intolerance is really high at the moment, but it's changing. There are people that are against minimalism. There are people that are against atonalism. There are people that are against using the same chord progression that pop music uses. But we are going through the process that we have so many different styles, different things. Just do whatever you want. As long as you're being able to express, to have your signature to your music, I think that's what matters. And I took that for life. And that's why for me, composition, I was commissioned, I was requested to, with a commission of works for a certain type of music. It was like, I don't feel comfortable working with this. I mean, I am able to, but I don't feel comfortable. And that was my, approach in composition. I know there are people that they live off composition, but it goes back to the same style as Mozart. My problem in performing Mozart's piano music is that everything is too happy, because he was requested that way. He couldn't compose other things. He has like one minor sonata, and in the whole spectrum of his composition, the aristocracy, like the environment that he was paid to compose was, it reflects in his composition because he was obligated to do that. And it reflects throughout the entire history, or if we go to Tchaikovsky, when he had to, the only way he could express his inner self was through his composition, but he could not talk about it. He could not talk about the motivation to compose certain things. And I think that's the beauty of composing the 21st century, is that we are able to express ourselves and not be so worried about it. And that's why it's flourishing with different styles. Everyone is composed a different way. There are new technology coming up. There are new people with like a lot more potential than others when it comes to technology, like Sharon and I mean, I'm completely opposed to it. Not opposed, that I'm almost incapable to learn.
Like a whole nother world. Yeah, it is.
I feel like I would have to start from scratch, but it's, it's fascinating.
It
All
is
of
really
it is extremely
fascinating.
fascinating, and
Well, that's a great note to end on. So I really